This is Nicholas Elwood over at Asset Locator, where we empower groups that are interested in buying, selling, and or gathering leads for commercial buildings, businesses, and for merger and acquisitions. We utilize a bespoke lead generation platform integrated on the blockchain while using AI and machine learning to produce money-driven quality leads for these groups. As a day one component to Asset Locator, we have a podcast designed to expedite the visibility and awareness of our guests, partners, and sponsors to the rest of the world. As one of the co-founders, I hope to share together with our guests our in-depth industry-wide knowledge and promote our income streams in meaningful ways that share value to all. Although he probably needs no introductions, we do have the honor of having a longtime personal friend and business partner on the show today, Don Wendel. So Don, president and sole owner of the Texas region for Murphy Business, which is a nationally recognized business brokerage firm. They have different offices in 38 states and Canada. Don and Tom Foster, his new business partner, are part of the mergers and acquisitions team. So Don actually made a major move last year where he actually became the sole owner of the Texas region for Murphy. So as the president of Murphy Business North and South Texas, some of his many responsibilities include managing the entire region's operations, continuously growing his company's bottom line by directly locating and qualifying franchise owners, M&A professionals, and agents that meet their company's standards. In addition, with a strong network of banking relationships, he has the ability to quickly and efficiently secure various financing methods for clients and their deals. So before we get in the juicy part of the podcast, Don, as you and I were talking offline a bit, we both acknowledge that our personal and business lives have significant overlap and synergy with one another. I come from the school of thought that if one is disciplined, then you can have both a wonderful marriage and a family at home, as well as having a wonderful career. Goal here is for you to come on the podcast and share what you've learned about life and business. Tell us more about the businesses you're a part of and really how you got there. So us and the viewers can really get an accurate insight and paint a picture of how Don Wendel paved his own path in life. So Don, let's get this started. I have a question for you, and it's one I've meant to ask you for some time. Not only do business owners buy and sell businesses, per your previous job experience, you come from a transportation logistics centric background, which included a startup resulting in a $5 million organization over 4 years and a complete positive overhaul of another company valued at $26 million. What was that process really like for you to transition from logistics to now running a business brokerage firm with Murphy?
Interesting process, in the transportation industry, growing up as an entrepreneur in that industry, you have to wear a lot of hats. You have to do every job: truck, dispatch, customer service, answer the phone, banking, accounting. So you're doing a lot of things. And as that evolves into a larger size company, it's just an action-packed day filled with a number of different things. And that one of the things I loved about it. So the hardest part about the transition when I left that to come here was, what am I going to do that's going to challenge me like that? And being a business owner for so many years, I didn't really come here with the intent to work for somebody else. So I was in search of a business to purchase, and that was the beginning part of the transition. And then it became, learning how to be a buyer versus, the owner. So you got to buy it first before you own it. Part of that challenge was, as I was going through the process, my wife's a banker. I've done P&L and management and finance quite a bit over the years. I kind of reached out to the different brokers in the Dallas metro area through all my networking and kind of set up interviews to learn about them, the industry, and what the availability was. I wasn't really concerned about valuing a company, kind of knew how to do that. And then I have somebody that, finances them. So with those skill sets matched, it just became a bigger task than I thought. The trucking industry taught me a lot more than I thought it did or ever thought it would about the M&A industry or the acquisition industry. Just being a buyer was a little bit different, and in a way, it was a little bit frustrating. There's the industry, especially in the lower middle market end of it, it's pretty wide open. It's not very regulated, and you get some really good brokers and you get some really bad ones, like any industry. But the inventory was difficult to find. Brokers weren't qualifying the sellers, setting the expectations correctly. So there was a lot of things in the market that were overpriced, undervalued. And when you did come across one, and we can put a number to it and find out if it was financeable, and then the next day, did my heart go pitter patter over? Is this what I want to do for a living? It was a taller task. So I got a pretty firsthand look of the industry and how it was, from a buyer's perspective. Anyway.
Right. So, Don, in your experience, obviously that transition must have been really tough. There was a lot of ups. There's always ups, but then there's always downs as well. Not to mention you're dipping your toes into a brand new industry. The business brokerage is very similar to my own industry within commercial real estate in that they're both huge. They're also with massive sectors and dominant market shares. There's bound to be flaws in those respective industries. In your mind, what are some flaws in the business brokerage space that you've really sought out to correct in your experience?
Uh, some of that I mentioned, and then I really understood them when I heard about the Murphy platform. So I can tie the two together. A lot of it is just inexperience, unprofessionalism, or lack of training sometimes can equate to that. So, people are telling people what they want to hear, slapping listings on websites and kind of backing in to see if the banks will finance it, a buyer has enough money. There's just not enough qualification and not enough due diligence up front from the broker industry in general. And therein, would lie the problem when you find some pretty good brokers out there, independent. They don't have a plethora of inventory. They might have one thing that's pretty good. And then I did discover that once you did find something that was good, there's already 3 offers on it. So, and then with that, I did a lot of networking here. Jersey guy in Dallas, right? So I did a lot of networking here. They used to call me the mayor, the mayor of Dallas. And through another trucking associate I had met from Philadelphia that was living out here, he introduced me to a gentleman that was on the ground floor of this Murphy opportunity. And when we got together, and I was learning about it, I fell in love with the process. And Roger Murphy really put together why do people fail in the industry kind of platform, and built a national empire off. Roger he was a business owner, sold it, loved the process. Hey, that guy made a lot of money doing that process. I'd like to be in it. So he and a bunch of current Murphy people now used to be in the IBBA, which is another brokerage platform, very loose, very like some of the things I said, some really good people in it. So they got together behind Roger, and Roger had Murphy going in Florida for quite some years, and then rolled it out as nationally. And Richard and I purchased the rights of Texas. He actually got it in it about 6 months before I met him, so he did it. And then when we met, we shared some diverse skill sets, and married up our partnership, and did 14 years together and built quite a platform. But it really is based on all those things. So setting expectations with sellers and buyers, very key to what we do. For a short version of it. But aside from that, we're very different than the way everybody else operates.
Well, those are some great points that you made, Don. I really especially like how you hit the points of how everyone has a different kind of expertise in their field. That's why you're so good at networking, and you were able to piece together and connect the dots on how you met Roger Murphy as well. So very insightful, and I appreciate that. That ties in directly to what I'm going to follow up with here. So firstly, do you think you need to have previously owned and operated businesses to run a successful brokerage? And then to follow up on that, how long did it really take you to truly find that first great deal?
So first, you need to be an entrepreneur, business owner to be in the brokerage industry. No. And if you look around the industry, or I could tell you from looking around the industry, there's not many people that were true entrepreneurs. The most recent are the ones that, we sell a business for somebody they love the process, kind of like what happened to Roger, and then they want to get involved, and we get people that are interested in our opportunity because of that. No, you don't, but you do need to understand people well, understand what your particular strength and skill set is, and be very cognizant of what your skill sets aren't. For instance, I'm a sales operation guy. I love the people end of the business. If I have to do counting, which I do, and numbers and things like that, I will, but I prefer not to. There's people that come out of corporate America that we've been fortunate enough to have and build a nice firm that come from sales end of it. They'll come from these counting end of it. They're spreadsheet people. Everybody has their skill set, right? But you just got to understand what you're good at and what you're not, and then marry up people around you, preferred partners and or other brokers in Murphy, and maybe work with them. So there's a lot of ways to leverage what you do, or just or stick to what you know here, follow our process, and there's enough tools behind you to get it done. But no, but people skills, yes, but probably the key part of the business, understanding the psychology of what's going on once you learn the trade.
Right. Well, that really, Don, that hits the nail on the head. I remember my mentor always telling me, the older guys I work with now telling me as well, to focus on a paycheck versus a project, which can really prove to be difficult to do when you're first starting out in the business. So, Murphy, being a nationally recognized business brokerage, represents many business owners on the sale or listing side for owners looking to exit the business for a variety of different reasons, or just a standard acquisition. While there are tons of unrealistic sellers out there, in my experience too, within commercial real estate, on the flip side, there's a lot of crazy buyers out there too. No kidding. What are some of the red flags that you've really come across while either representing the buyers on an acquisition or from speaking to a prospective buyer looking to buy a business?
There's a couple. It starts with the seller, so I'll start there. Our whole being exists around setting an expectation. A seller that's motivated, that understands what the value of his company is going to be, that understands that what that package will look like as far as the deal structure goes, and that net number to the seller is going to get them to where they want to go at the next level. That goes back to what was not done in the past. So once you start with that, you have a really good motivated seller ready to go. Being a Texas-wide firm and a national firm, once that listing it goes public, there's no shortage of the buyers coming in, and therein lies where your question comes in. The red flags from a seller would be, if I don't get, I need, I want. Those are initial things that are you kind of got to take note of. Buyers, buyers think they know the process. And I was somebody who thought I knew the process and learned it, but I also did some things on my own that brokers wouldn't do today, but to help out. For instance, give a financial package, where the money's going to come from, that kind of thing. But the buyers today, big red flags would be, hey, just send me the paperwork. I've done this a long time. I know what I'm doing. Have you talked to a bank? Have you got pre-qualified? No. And so those kind of questions lead to somebody who doesn't want to follow. Somebody in my firm would say, I say this a lot, the program, right? And the people that don't are just not for us. So when I talk to a buyer, I don't mind if a buyer is not ready or not qualified. If they're willing to follow a process, do some homework, talk to a bank that I'll refer them to find out what their purchase power really is. The buyers, when you ask a buyer, so how much you have? Pick a number. I don't know. I got 200,000 I can put down. Is that the last 200,000 of your life? Are you borrowing that? And would you really give it away, kind of thing, right? So you really got to drill down and find out. And if they're willing to follow that process, you're working with somebody that's pretty good. And working with buyers that have a specific interest in one of our listings, it's a pleasure doing that, because that's the other half of getting a deal done. The bank, the buyer, and the seller. I think at one point we were talking and we mentioned the Olympic symbol, the 3 rings, right? There was 5 in the symbol. But if those 3 rings aren't overlapping each other from the get-go, you're probably never going to get your deal done. So we look to get all that covered up front with sellers and buyers, and just get to the point. And if they're not willing to do it, then that's okay. Somebody else will spend plenty of time with them.
Right. That's exactly right. Because managing sellers and buyers' expectations is the key to running a successful business and just getting the deal done, as you said. If those rings, those Olympic rings, don't align, then how are you going to get the deal done? How can the bank, the buyer, and the seller all work together if they're not on the same page?
There's one other part to that. And you asked a question earlier about how long did it take to get really to your first deal. Before we even started looking for brokers, franchise owners, agents, M&A professionals, we put together a preferred transactional partner network of pretty much a who's who in Dallas. So, if you have an accounting issue, you need a lawyer, you need to understand what a stock sale for a C corporation is going to be and how that deal structure is going to look. There's somebody that needs to come in and explain it to you, and they're going to probably charge you some money for it. But when you have the right team around you, we don't have to be the know-all. We just have to, be the person that can put it all together for them. Our team consists of, right? So that's part of it, of getting the deals done. And that's not common. It's in the lower to middle market. It's more common when you get up higher in maybe investment banking or the bigger M&A firms. But in mainstream end of it, not.
Right. So coming from the real estate space, Don, I have to ask you, how many times have you run into the scenario to where the buyer doesn't want to just buy the business, but also the real estate that comes with it? And you're about to elaborate more into this as well. But buying the real estate with the business is usually more favorable to banks. So have you run into that scenario a lot? And, tell us a little bit about this.
Yeah, you run into it in different forms, different fashions. Real estate's always, or could be, the largest part of a transaction. If you take something like a C store where the real estate could be invaluable compared to what the discretionary earnings is on a monthly basis. It's more of a real estate transaction than it is a business transaction. So I'll answer your question by going backwards to the beginning of when we talk to a seller before a buyer's interested. We're very aware of that. And we're having conversations up front with the seller about the ability to sell the business, the real estate, and or the business and the real estate, because it keeps your buyer pool wide open. If it's I got to sell the real estate and the business only, that may happen. But there's a lot of people that could afford the business that might not be able to afford the real estate. And there is times where the business is doing way more than the real estate is. So yeah, it happens all the time. We're aware of it. So we just, if the buyers or the sellers are open to any of the above, then it solves that buyer question you just said, right?
Don, so in your opinion, what is the most important or successful personality trait or strength that someone really needs to be successful in your business or business in general?
People skills. You can be greatest accountant. You can be Mrs. Spreadsheet, great operator. You could be a really good salesperson. Not all those, but people skills probably the number one, because if people skills allows you to put all that together, whatever your own particular skill set is. And the reason for that is there's so much more than, once you value a company correctly and you get the confidential information memorandum done correctly and the numbers are kind of lining up. If a buyer's backing out, you miss something, right? It's not about the numbers. It's about something you're missing that they're holding back for, or maybe there's a million reasons why they would hold back, but they don't always tell you. And if you're looking at this and he's worried about what's on, or she's worried about what's, paragraph 3, line 4, what's that all about? Explain that, add back. You're missing the psychology that's going on. So you got to pay attention to what's going on between the buyer and the seller. And once you find that the numbers are good and the buyer and seller kind of like each other, then it's kind of step back and let it happen, get out of the way. And some brokers don't do that, let them go, So I would say people skills is my opinion. And sticking to it.
People skills, and like you just mentioned, asking the right questions. You have to ask a lot of open-ended questions, especially in your space, my space, and really in the space where you're almost like a doctor. You're diagnosing the buyer or seller almost like a patient. You want to do right by them. So you have to ask the right questions to really figure out what's exactly going on. And like you said, understanding the psychology between the buyer and the seller and the bank in some cases too.
Yeah, qualification. I mean, that's you can also say that's maybe sales skills. Salespeople are better at that because they've done it under pressure. Especially if you've ever been a commission salesperson, which I started my career as, So, but we talk to the younger brokers. When I say younger by maturity in the industry, not by their age. The less you're talking, the better it's going. And I learned from my first partner, one of the greatest opening questions, just how can I help you? And you can get somebody, an owner, tell them your life story in tears, and but then the other side of that is tears and sweat equity and numbers that aren't good don't equate to a good listing. So you have to pay attention to everything that's going on. But, but that's, they'll be willing to tell you. That's one thing I think being an entrepreneur I can do because I've been there. I've started companies from scratch. I've done those long, crazy days and, you're sleeping a couple hours a night in your office chair and never home on the weekends and all that. So I can relate a little bit to that. That's probably the only benefit of that. But yeah.
So, Don, it's integral to have a great team and a deep bench to run a successful shop. I remember my mentors always tell me, we have a deep bench. That's something that you should relay to the clients if they're trying to strong arm you or trying to swindle you out of a commission or trying to get the better of you. We have a deep bench. And to run a successful shop, you need those. You need a great team. You need a deep bench. You need a lot of lines of communication, which you've obviously mentioned. So you also briefly touched on this before, but what was the biggest reason in your mind for your success and for Murphy becoming this big business brokerage powerhouse?
Well, it started with Roger's model. And, if you would have asked me at the time, I'm a calculated risk taker, always have been. In 2008, when the banks are crashing, I'm in a new state looking to be in a new industry. Would I start a business brokerage firm when the banks are closed and nothing's, really happening? I would tell you, probably, because I did, right? So, but we were very fortunate. We had a really good model, and I looked at the model as an opportunity in the industry. So I had a different spin on why I wanted to do this. I just thought if we could do this, and I didn't know 14 years later how big we'd be, and now we're the largest in the United States, mainstream mid-level big business brokerage firm. So, it's our people, and we were very fortunate that through that crash of 2008, that a lot of good people came available that were either exiting or asked to exit corporate America with nice packages. So, and it was a time where most of my career at Murphy was the recruiter, right? You got to do what you got to do to get it going. So we were very fortunate to just attract some high-end quality people of all those different skill sets we were telling you about, right? And then having to teach them the process. And now you're going from, if I have somebody answer my phone, I get my paycheck. If I have a bad day, I still get paid, to coming into an industry where you're doing it on your own. We're not setting your alarm, but we had some really good quality people, and almost all those people are still with us today. So couldn't be more proud of that. But we wouldn't be what we are in Texas without them. I live in a we world, like you mentioned before, your team, your bench, and I talk to people. I don't need to know everything. Don't need to be the know-it-all. Have somebody, Jersey, I got a guy for that, right? But we have somebody, we have a subject matter expert for that specific thing. Would you be willing to talk to him or her? So it's really about that whole team concept, even though some people are out there on their own, but they're not on their own. They have all that at their disposal, and that translates really well to the client base, that especially even a smaller deal. Then you're going to get some partners on the deal. You're going to get these high-end professional people on your deal. That's unheard of. So that would be it. I would tell you, it's them. I didn't even start doing deals myself till 4 or 5 years ago. So it was really more running and managing that part of the process, and the training with my partner, so on.
What's one of your biggest pet peeves? What is something that really just grinds your gears day in and day out?
It's easy for me. It's disloyalty. And that goes hand in hand with dishonesty. So I'm a loyal to a fault kind of guy. probably one of my faults, right? But yeah, just that would be it. It's pretty simple. It happens in friendships. It happens in business. Happens kind of everywhere. Corporate America, where I started my career. So you learn, and you learn how to work within that, and ignore it and move on, right? Take the good from people and use it. Take the bad from people, and hopefully never do that yourself, kind of thing. But it's a really easy one for me. So pet peeve.
Excellent. I appreciate that. What are 3 books that you would recommend to the audience, and why?
My wife would be laughing at the question if she was sitting at this table, because I'm not a reader, right? I'm a visual person, and I'd rather, I read magazine, the whole thing on an airplane, but I read the last page, the first page, the middle page, true to my Gemini personality, I guess. But I read a book that was recommended. I coach youth sports. And when you're coaching, you're really a teacher, right? It's not just X's and O's of football. It's a little bit life lessons and things that go along with it. So a friend of mine recommended this book by Drew Bledsoe, quarterback. I believe it was called, it's been a long time since I read it, Make the Right Call. And it's real easy reading. Of course, that's why I read it. But it's fascinating about, it's really about teaching children how to make decisions and the consequences of them, and letting them make decisions on their own so they can learn. So the more they learn to make the little decisions, when the bigger ones come, it's a little bit easier and they can process it better. So I thought it was fascinating, and I would recommend that, because whether you're a coach, whether you got kids, or just in general, it's a life lesson, right? That everybody in some form or fashion has to deal with. I would say that Motley Crue book, but it's probably not apropos for this, because I just come from the music business a little bit. There's a little coffee table book called, you're making me dig hard for the names of this. Don't Sweat the Small Stuff. Little 4x4, and it's all these little stupid things people on a daily basis get aggravated at. And when you read it, you kind of go, yeah, we spend a lot of wasted energy on stuff like that. I don't remember. I think that's it. We'll leave the Motley Crue book in there. I think there might have been one more, but that would be it.
Well, following up on what you just said, Don, youth sports guy, you coach youth sports, you like a Drew Bledsoe book. Tell me, what sports teams did you grow up on?
I grew up a true diehard Dallas Cowboy fan from New Jersey from day one. Still am, though it's wearing on me a little bit. I knew Bill Parcells pretty well. If you ever saw his documentary, his mentor is a guy that was my athletic director in high school, Mickey Cochran. And then Mickey Cochran was friends with my dad. They were all baseball players. My dad played professional baseball. So when he came here, I was thrilled to have him here. I just kind of like that coaching style. I think we could still use some of that around here. And I'm a big New York Ranger hockey fan. I was there. My family had tickets, and I had them in the trucking firm that I was involved with, and I was able to see them win the Stanley Cup, which was probably one of the greatest single sporting events I've ever seen. Aside from that, that's it. Those are my two, ones I really care about that they're on. I must watch. Die-hard stuff. I like a lot of sports. I play a lot of sports. Played a lot of sports. But I got I got to say the Niners. My wife's from California, and we've watched them win last week. So sorry.
Well, Don, I want to thank you so much for joining the podcast today. And viewers, if you didn't know Don Wendel, now you do. And make sure, just with a couple clicks on Google, go search Murphy Business or type in murphybusiness.com to check him out. He's obviously the president and partner of Murphy Business North and South Texas. If you're looking to buy a business, if you're looking to sell out of a business, if you're even just looking to get a valuation, understand what your business may be worth, make sure to give them a call and check them out. So, Don, I want to thank you so much for coming on.
Thanks for having me. Appreciate it.